What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Dwyer from the Bunker Recordings and BetterMixes.com, and today we're going to take a look at the differences between clip gain and volume automation in Pro Tools, and when you might want to use one over the other. I've had a handful of people asking me about this, so I figured I'd make a quick video explaining the differences between them and explaining when I might use one over the other. So first off, in case you're not familiar with it, to use clip gain, if you go to one of your clips here, there is this little fader down in the bottom left corner along with a number next to it. And if you just grab that fader, you can turn it up or down. And as you can see in the waveform here, it is making it louder or quieter. And if you don't see that there on your clips, you can go up to View and then Clip, and then make sure Clip Gain Info is checked. You can also select this Clip Gain line, which puts this line here. And from there, you can get a lot more precise with your clip gain. You can either just grab it and drag it up or down like we did with the fader, but you can also tweak it more. You can add some nodes here to, just apply the clip gain to specific areas and do something, like that or whatever. But we'll undo that for now and get rid of that view. And just use this fader here. So now you might be thinking, if this clip gain fader just turns the volume up and down, what's the difference between that and your main fader over here? Because ultimately, if we don't have any processing on this track, they essentially are the same. But that's the key there, if we don't have any processing, because clip gain happens before all your plugins, as opposed to your volume fader, which comes after your plugins. And just to show you that, I added a plugin with a VU meter onto this track, so we can see that happening. So if I play here and adjust the volume fader, nothing should be changing on this meter.
Don't tell me I'm worth dying to do us breathe.
So as you can see, even when I brought the volume fader all the way down, we were still getting level here. But then if I do the same thing with our clip gain fader,
don't tell me I'm worth dying to do us breathe.
Now you can see that when I brought it all the way down, there was no level actually getting to our plugins. So now that you understand that, let's talk about why you might choose one over the other. So if we continue to look at this vocal line here, you can see that the first half is considerably quieter than the second half. And this could have been for a number of reasons. It's possible that the first half and the second half are different takes and they adjusted their preamp level in between these takes. Or maybe she leaned in closer to the mic here. And part of it's just the intensity of her singing, although both of these are pretty gentle, so that doesn't make up for the full difference here. But regardless, if we put our processing on and open up our compressor, let's jump to the louder line and see how much compression we're getting.
Don't tell me I'm worth dying for when all I wanted to do was breathe.
So it looks like we're maxing out around, 5 or 7 decibels of compression there. And then let's go to this earlier part.
To end this war, 'cause I won't tickle fights.
So there we were only getting like 1 decibel of compression. And in this case, I'd like it to sound a little more consistent, because to me it sounds a little bit funny with this area barely hitting the compressor and then getting quite a bit of compression here. So clip gain can easily fix this for us. So if we just make a break in between these two sections, which you can do by hitting B, we can then grab our clip gain fader and bring up this first line a little bit. So maybe something like that. And now let's hear the transition between these two sections.
'Cause I won't tickle fights in blanket forts. Don't tell me I'm worth dying for when all I wanted to do.
So now this whole verse is hitting our compressor and the rest of our processing chain at a more consistent level, which gives us a more consistent sound. Some people will go a lot more in depth with this and, any line that's a little off, they'll do that. Maybe bring this up, get them really, really consistent. But for me, that's a little too much. I think that starts to sound a little funny when it's hitting the compressor like too consistently. I like the sound of the voice's natural dynamics kind of working against the compressor, but that's just me. You can obviously do it however you want. Another spot I find myself using clip gain a lot is on guitars, especially lead guitars. With electric guitars, sometimes you'll be changing amp settings from one part of the song to the next to get different sounds, and that can sometimes lead to certain parts being quite a bit louder than others, or in this case, we have this acoustic lead guitar, and we'll once again bring up our compressor on that just to see what it's doing. So if we look at this first part, So we're just doing like 1 or 2 decibels of compression. But then when we hop to the second part, that's obviously quite a bit quieter, and I'm missing the sound of the compression on that. So we can just bring this up a little bit. By the way, in addition to clicking and dragging the fader here, you can also adjust clip gain by holding Shift and Control on Mac and then scrolling. So let's bring that up to, I don't know, right about there and see what that sounds like. Cool. So now we're just kissing the compressor just like we were in this section. So we've got that more consistent sound and consistent level throughout the part. And then the other thing I'll use clip gain for is if I get tracks to mix and they were just recorded overall really, really loud or really, really quiet. Like if we look at this piano part. So you can see on the meters here that it's really quite low, which can be a little bit of a pain once we start putting processing on it. If we do any dynamics processing, you might have to like completely crank the input on that plugin just to get some gain reduction happening. So I'll just use my clip gain as a super basic gain staging tool. I don't do anything too nerdy with this. I actually made a whole nother video on gain staging, which I will link right up here if you want to check that out. But ultimately, I'll just bring the clip gain up until my level is living somewhere in the middle of the meter here. So that should work better. So yeah, that's how I use clip gain. Ultimately, summing that up, it's just setting the level going into our processing chain. And then from there, I'll use our volume fader and volume automation to adjust the level that we're actually hearing in the mix. After we have all our processing on the track, I'll set my overall level with the fader here. And then once we get towards the end of the mix, I'll go in and write automation to turn up anything that I want to be louder and to turn down anything I want to be quieter. So hopefully that clears up the difference for you. If you found this video helpful, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And head on over to bettermixes.com to grab a free copy of my Ultimate EQ cheat sheet. And by the way, this song is called Tickle Fights and Blanket Forts by Alexandra Grace. So be sure to check her out on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music.